Is it cycling eternally? This is something that Einstein kind of believed. Let me give you the model. The model looks like this. Imagine that instead of this being an expansion universe from a point in the past, what you have is over time, from all of eternity past to all of eternity future, the universe has been shrinking, pulling back from gravity, singularity, eventually slowed by gravity, back a singularity, and so over time, it gets large, then gravity pulls it back, singularity, large, gravity pulls it back, singularity. See what's happening here? This is one way. Now, we just happen right now in history to be at a point where what we're seeing is the expansion period. If we were over here, we'd be seeing a universe that's shrinking. That's the argument. Make sense? So we happen to be on the expansion side and not the decrease side. Now, one of the problems with this was discovered by another scientist whose name was Richard Tolman. And he said, wait a minute, the second law of thermodynamics, that's not going to work. Here's what he meant by it. What he meant was, okay, if I start here, all right, you may happen to see this thing is growing. You're at a point of growth, but you have less energy as time goes by. And so the next bounce will have less energy in it, and therefore the growth will be higher, and it'll be a longer distance between the next crunch and a higher arc before the next crunch. Why? Because energy is dissipating. But if you run that in reverse, it means it's going to get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter in the past, and you're still stuck with the beginning. Follow me? So he would argue that even in this kind of cyclical universe, you're still stuck with the beginning because of the second law of thermodynamics. But a bigger question is, do you think it's really true that there's enough gravity, enough matter in the universe close enough in proximity so that gravity would ever really pull it back? That's the argument. The argument is at some point it slows because of gravity and it pulls back. The problem is the science doesn't demonstrate this. This researcher from Notre Dame, he's talked about it in several writings. His name is Peter Garnovich, and he says this: we cannot make much of a conclusion. By the way, they're making this by looking out at the universe, at other supernovas. And he says, we cannot make much of a conclusion from a single farthest supernova we've seen, but when we average it with several others, here's the money line, we find to a 95% level of confidence that the density of matter is insufficient to halt the expansion of the universe. In other words, this could never happen anyway because there's not enough matter in the universe for gravity to slow its growth. So this whole idea of an expanding and collapsing cyclical universe doesn't work. Well, maybe it's part of a larger eternal environment. In other words, by the way, lots of people think this. You've got Alexander Vilenkin, who believes in a multiverse, and he's got theories about this. And then you have a guy who maybe you're familiar with, his name is Lawrence Krauss. And Lawrence has been in some trouble recently, but he is an ASU, Arizona State University, a quantum physicist, and he's got some theories also. These are the most popular theories out there. I just want to cover them with you. You guys have heard of multiverses, right? Here's the idea for how multiverses come together. They're saying there's a quantum environment in which universes pop into existence from nothing at a very small quantum level. Then these quantum level particles grow into universes. So it's been illustrated by way of a boiling pot of water. And so the pot is the environment in which universes emerge. Follow me? And like little bubbles, they start off small, and then they grow. And as these grow and they get larger, they turn into not just quantum level particles of energy, but they turn into entire universes. Now you might wonder, well, wait a minute, if that's true, I would expect then that at some point when the universes get really big, that they're going to bump into each other like bubbles do at the top of the water. Right? So we should have some evidence from the collision of universes that we do have a multiverse environment, right? Oh, no, we don't see that. By the way, there's virtually no good evidence for multiverse theory at all to begin with. But we would expect to see these collisions, and so they asked that question. Why aren't I seeing those collisions then? Oh, well, because the pot is also growing. And the pot is actually growing at a slightly faster pace than the universe is, therefore they'll never come into contact with each other. Really? Now, when Vilenkin saw this was the theory, he had something to say about it. Here's what he said. He said, really? Okay. This is in fact not, it's not possible. If this is growing, okay, then you can't avoid a singularity. It's not in fact possible in future eternal inflationary space-times as long as they obey some reasonable physical conditions. Such models must necessarily possess initial singularities. Here's the point in English. Ready? If this is also expanding like the universe, the expansion of the universe demonstrates the universe had a beginning, right? Well, the expansion of the pot demonstrates the pot has to have a beginning. You haven't avoided the problem of a singularity. You just pushed it back one level. Got it? So even if there's a multiverse generator out there that's also expanding, you're still stuck with, how did that thing get here? But it's worse than that. Because the question is, what is this thing made of? Remember, there's no space, time, or matter until the beginning of our universe. Space is not nothing, guys. Space is something. There's not even a void you could call space. That's something. That didn't exist until the universe. Wrap your head around that for a second, okay? What if space is not nothing, it's something. What is nothing? It's what Aristotle says. It's what rocks dream about. Nothing. Now, why is this important? Because this is what Krauss says. Krauss says this. Now, look. A universe can come into existence from nothing because the definition of nothing has changed. Physics has changed what we mean by nothing. Empty space is a boiling, bubbling brew of virtual particles popping in and out of existence. If you wait long enough, that kind of nothing will always produce particles that eventually turn into universes. Well, wait a minute. Hang on. Hold on. We're trying to explain how all space, time, and matter came into being from nothing. And here's what Lawrence says. He says, well, if you start with empty space... No. Lawrence, we're trying to explain where that came from. He says, well, if you start with that, and then you get some virtual particles popping... No, Lawrence, we're trying to explain where that came from too. He said, now he's got space and matter energy in there, right? And then he says, get this, if you wait long enough, so now you've got time too. So basically he's saying, hey, if I got space, time, and energy, I can get space, time, and energy. Duh! I know that. Yeah, you just redefine what nothing is to suit your purposes. That doesn't work. You guys have all done this. I know you have. Remember when you were a kid and you go home and you open up a refrigerator at your mom's house and you see in the refrigerator, you're starving. It's after school, you're starving. And this is her refrigerator? What's the first thing you're going to say? There's nothing to eat in here. Why? Because you've redefined nothing. There's a bunch of stuff in there you could eat. So if you want to stay inside the room to explain how the room got there, there's two ways to do it. You could say that there's some way that I could either redefine time or somehow it could be expanding. I can answer questions in the Q&A if you want to go more on that. But the problem with that, of course, is it requires you to redefine something. That doesn't work. Or you could say we have some oscillating growth and expansion and contraction, but that's not supported by the evidence. The third option is a multiverse theory, but the multiverse theory does not allow you to stay in the room because that multiverse generator is outside the room. So if you're going to go this way, you're going to have to jump out of the room. Now, the problem with that, of course, is you've already said to me that I believe there's an external cause for the universe. Okay. But your cause is somehow got space, time, and matter. But we know that doesn't exist. My cause is not spatial, temporal, or material. It actually fits the evidence. Your cause doesn't anymore. Because he's doing that little trick. That little trick where he uses this language, but then he steals space, time, and matter. Right? Yeah, if you have all that, you can get it. On the other hand, if there's an all-powerful, non-spatial, non-temporal, right, non-material, personal being that could create all of this outside the box, that explains everything. And it fits the evidence. If it's the physical evidence,